President Trump is now chairing a meeting of his cabinet at his Camp David retreat. We're going to be watching that meeting and watching President Trump for anything that he might say on any number of topics which are developing and high up the news agenda as I speak. Among them, we're hearing that Hamas says it will not implement the terms of a deal to dispose of its weapons until Israel approves a plan that's been put forward by Trump that would lead to the creation, or towards the creation, Trump argues, of a Palestinian government. Last night, the US president claimed that an historic agreement had been reached to disarm Hamas and for other militant groups in Gaza to follow suit. The success of a deal, though, is subject to, Israel's military withdrawal from the territory in the first instance and any number of other tests after that. Aaron David Miller is the Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Hello to you, Aaron, and welcome.
Thanks, John. Good to be here with you.
Aaron, thanks for joining us. So we have the president then claiming that he's brokered an historic agreement for Hamas to lay down arms and Hamas to withdraw from Gaza. I guess, Aaron, it's fair to say celebrations now would be a little bit premature.
I would say that's right, John. You know, in a galaxy far, far away, I think this plan would have a reasonable chance of implementation. But given the realities back here on planet Earth, and the core reality is Hamas and the Israelis, are they really prepared to invest in this and to violate their own red lines? Disarmament in the case of Hamas, withdrawal, incremental, or at the end of the disarmament process, as complicated as it may be for the Israelis. And I'd like to not answer that question the way I'm going to answer it now, and basically to say that they are not. I mean, the experience in Northern Ireland, I think, is incredibly instructive here. The Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. It took 7 years. 7 years of an extraordinary process, the most successful effort, I think, to demilitarize, decommission, and integrate non-state actors, violent non-state actors, the IRA and Protestant paramilitaries, into a political settlement. And it actually worked. But it took 7 years, and the process was literally tethered to a verification mechanism under the guidance of a very talented Canadian. It was relatively discreet. They didn't try to embarrass either party in giving up their arms. And it was tethered to integration into governance. Now, you could look at the Israeli-Hamas issue and you could say, well, none of those things are there now. And I'm not sure it's going to be possible to create them. So, you know, I guess if I had to make a prediction, I think Gaza is going to remain divided, dysfunctional, and sadly, tragically, sporadically violent for quite some time to come.
Now, the established pattern of this process, Aaron, has been on the one side Israel, on the other side Hamas. Neither side wants to be seen to be the obstacle. They want the other side to be seen to be the principal obstacle. But they both have reasons for hanging on to their purchase, hanging on to their position in some way.
They do. And from the standpoint of the mediator, Donald Trump, you know, if he was brokering an agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, or between Israel and Egypt, or between Israel and Syria, the margin that he could use to actually find the balance point between what would satisfy Israeli interests and what would satisfy Hamas's, that margin would increase, but he's not. Whatever you think of Israeli policy and the Netanyahu government, and I have a very low estimation of both, the reality is Israel is not Hamas. It is not an organization which on October 7th made a strategic decision to inflict a level of pain and trauma on Israeli civilians unprecedented in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the Israelis, of course, responded by killing thousands of Palestinian civilians in their determination to root out Hamas and transfer risk responsibility from their own soldiers to Palestinian civilians. But that doesn't allow the president to find the balance point between Hamas, an organization which, according to American law, is still classified as a foreign terrorist organization, and a U.S. ally, however strained the relationship may be, in Israel. So Trump's capacity to mediate this, to see it through, I worry, John, that this is going to have the same fate as the Memorandum of Understanding, which essentially, sadly, became a memorandum of misunderstanding.
Okay, that is, I suppose, a gloomy but an all too realistic sounding assessment. Thank you so much, Aaron. Aaron David
Thanks,
Miller
John.
there. And Tim Marshall, let's get Tim's view now. I mean, you know this dispute, you know this region, you know a lot of the people involved here, Tim. How are you feeling about all of this now?
Well, I also sadly know, John, that what Mr. Miller just said is bang on the nose, because it's hard to see how you move it forward. If you look at the details of the plan, they're pretty good. You know, if you and I will both sign it. However, I'm not sure Hamas and Israel will. And there's 4 words that I've been looking at all day that keep getting repeated in Hebrew and Arabic: linked to and conditional upon. Both sides are saying, yeah, we'll do this if it's linked to this and if it's conditional upon this.
Yeah.
So basically, the Hamas is saying, hang on a minute, yeah, great plan, we'll do it, we'll disarm. I don't believe they will ever disarm, especially the heavy weapons. And that they will disband and they'll let the Palestinian Authority or an international body take over. I just don't see that happening. But they're saying we won't even move forward until the Israelis start to pull back.
Yes.
The Israelis are saying, oh, yeah, we could perhaps live with this deal if you did all this, but we're not going to do it until you start doing this. And so we're not actually any further forward than we were yesterday.
Yeah, in some ways, aren't we looking at a mutually convenient deadlock?
Yes, it's convenient to Hamas because they have no intention of giving up power. They're a revolutionary movement. You know, they tend not to give up power. And on the Israeli side, well, there's a whole bunch of things, including the ongoing shock to them of what happened on October 7th. But crucially, there's an election in just over 2 months' time. And Mr. Netanyahu, the current prime minister, is reliant on power, on a coalition government. The coalition government under him would always be made up of at least right of centre, if not extreme right-wing parties. And they are not going to accept this. And so that, you know, even if he said yes, it'll just be collapsed. So, you know, it's really sad because the things are in place.
And again,
Sorry, John, there's 5,000 troops waiting to go in.
Yes.
Morocco, Kosovo, Albania, Kazakhstan.
Yes.
They've all said we will send 5,000 of our troops once this process starts, but it hasn't started.
It hasn't started. And meanwhile, in the background, well, we have the Board of Peace, which it's practically faded from our consciousness, the Board of Peace, but it is still there. Its powers still, I don't know, fresh and untested. Its promises to step in and oversee all of these things, including, you know, maintaining law and order, keeping an eye on the population and stability, and so on. We just seem so far away from that Board of Peace, moving from its starting point of a grand opening ceremony to actually being useful.
Yeah, I sometimes think we get the intonation wrong, John. It should be Board of Peace, because, you know, they're just not moving it forward. As I said, the actual plan is feasible, is workable. Israel pulls back, or if you prefer it, Hamas begins to disarm. In comes this force, the International Stabilization Force. The Israelis move back to the original yellow line. The disarmament starts with a verification process. The Israelis move back a little bit more. This takes about a year. In come a newly trained police force. In come some technocrats from the West Bank. Hamas stands down, and it's peace and love, and the reconstruction begins. That's the plan. But we're not embarked on it.
Where does this go now? You have the President of the United States making... Maybe this is the wrong way to approach the question, because President Trump makes grand pronouncements and promises and statements and declarations of historic progress, well, not infrequently. And they will be there. They'll be in the headline. People like you and I will be discussing them until the next proclamation comes along. I know maybe we're just, well, you can never be too cynical, but it's tempting.
You and I have talked about this a fair bit, John. You do have to look at everything he says, because every now and again he means it, and every now and again what he says comes true. But most of the time it doesn't. David Miller just now, I think, referred to the Memorandum of Understanding, the idea of peace with Iran, which, when it first came out, I called it the Memorandum of Not Understanding Iran. because it was clear wouldn't go anywhere. So I'm afraid this is probably going to be filed into the rather larger cabinet full of files which Trump said something, nothing came of it. There is another cabinet, and this is why you have to take each time he shouts things in capital letters, you have to look at it and analyse it. But I'm pretty sure this goes in the bigger cabinet, not the this is all going to move ahead. I hope it does. I hope I'm wrong. But as I said at the beginning, if they're both saying you go first and neither is prepared to go first, how do you get going?
All right, Tim Marshall, foreign affairs analyst and author. Great to have you on the show. Let's hear what the president's saying now.
We rebuilt the armed forces. We rebuilt our military in my first term, but we are doing great with our military. They spent a lot of money in our military. They gave away $300 billion worth of ammo and everything else in Biden's term. But we're building it up fast, and we just have a great military. That's all there is to it. But we rebuilt it in my first term, and we're using it in my second term with Venezuela and other places, and Iran now. Iran is doing very poorly. Just in case you read incorrect stories, they're doing very, very poorly. They're having a hard time. They've been very dishonest. They've been very dishonorable to deal with. But that makes no difference. They're doing very, very poorly. We're also making that investment and looking forward to getting $1.5 trillion next year. People see now how important it is. We want to keep a safe country. We have to keep a safe country. And the good news is all of that equipment is made in the USA. So we're making it here. It's jobs. And each one of our defense groups are building literally at least 4 new massive plants as we speak, because we want them to move faster. We have the best equipment in the world, but we want them to move faster. We don't want to wait a year or a year and a half. We want to wait a week, maybe. So that's happening, and I think the results are very good. They're building at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And we've had tremendous success, and our military was just proud of it. Again, Venezuela was a one-day war, and we have a great relationship with Venezuela. We're working with partners with Venezuela now, taking out tens of millions of barrels of oil, and going to Houston, going to Alaska, going to Louisiana, going to different places for refineries, and it's been very much amazing. The administration has done more in 18 months than most administrations have done in 8 years if you had a two-termer. We've done more in 18 months than anyone's ever seen before. Nobody's ever seen. This is the golden age of America. And we have a war that's going on. I guess you call it a war. Maybe I call it a military operation. Because they have no Navy. It's been obliterated. Their Air Force has been obliterated. They have no planes. Their missiles have been largely, they have some left. They have some, but they have far fewer than they had 4 or 5 months ago. Their manufacturing capacity is almost gone. The drone capacity is almost gone. There are very few, but they have some. If they have one, that's too many as far as I'm concerned. But we've done an amazing job with Venezuela. We've done an amazing job here. We're in there for 5 months. You know, I know that people like to say, because we've done a much bigger job, much more important job than we originally anticipated. So we're in there for 5 months, and if you look at Vietnam, they were in there for 20 years. You look at Afghanistan, they were in there for many years. You look at any one of the wars, Korea, any one of them, they're in there for many years. We're in for 5 months, and we have obliterated their military capacity. Again, we've got some left, but soon they won't have some left. So I just want to thank everybody around this table. You've been very special. I want to thank a lot of the media people, because many of you...
We're going to put away there from Donald Trump speaking live at his cabinet meeting in his Camp David retreat. And as you heard there, the president switching between Iran and Venezuela, in each case proclaiming success, telling us not for the first time that Iran was doing very poorly, telling us that Iran's military capacity has been obliterated, not completely destroyed, and clearly not completely eliminated, because the conflict still continues and the exchanges of fire still continue. So a repetition of Donald Trump telling us that the war is worth waging, and that the success of the American military continues, and yet the war goes on